All right, welcome everyone. If you're joining us tonight, we are so grateful for you sharing the evening with us. We have quite a presentation for you tonight. We're going to be speaking about perfectionism and how we can support our students and our family and friends from the sidelines. What can we do for them? I have with me tonight an amazing panel from varied backgrounds. They are going to share some of their expertise, some tips, some tricks, some things that you need to know about. We also have a lot of resources to share with you tonight. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Maria, and she is going to start your presentation for you.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm Maria Selke. I'm a recovering perfectionist myself. Well, maybe not recovering. I was very nervous as we got started tonight. I've witnessed the struggles of perfectionist students throughout my entire career. I spent 6 years as an elementary special education teacher and then 13 years as an elementary gifted resource teacher outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I moved to Austin, Texas, and got connected with a small nonprofit private school for gifted students called ACE Academy. And I'm currently in my fourth year as the Dean of Faculty and Curriculum there. I have my master's degree in educational psychology with a concentration in gifted, and I'm currently pursuing my doctorate in cognitive diversity through Bridges Graduate School. I'm also the mom of two young adults who have had their issues with perfectionism along the way as well. So, Jessica, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Welcome tonight. My name is Jessica Lafollette, and I am a full-time teacher of gifted children. That's what I spend most of my day doing. Specifically, I work at the middle school level in those tween years, and I've been doing that for about 25 years now. I also work as an adjunct professor teaching educators about how to work with gifted children, and I'm from Kansas City. So I got my master's in Kansas and my doctorate in Missouri. I'm kind of a two-state person, so I'm also very interested in state policy and how that impacts gifted children in the classroom. And right now, I'm the chair of the Parent, Family, and Community Network for NAGC, and we are so excited to be hosting this webinar along with the Social Emotional Development Network because we think this is something where we both have an equal level of concern about perfectionism and how it affects our children. And I came into that parent role because I am a mother of 4 daughters, and I would easily say they're all perfectionists. And so we've had a lot of struggles in our house right now. I have ages 14, 16, 18, and 20. So it's a little wild at my house, but I've got some great strategies to share with you later. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. I'll turn it over to you next, Callie.
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Kali Fedor. I'm from Pennsylvania, the northeast region of Pennsylvania. It's finally warming up here. Yay. Maybe out of winter, hopefully. Fingers crossed. March can be dicey. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've actually taught in K-12 public education in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. So I had my hand in a couple different states. I first started working with gifted and twice exceptional learners during my time in Arizona. So I've been involved for quite some time. My current job is working as an assistant professor at one of our state universities here in Pennsylvania. And I have served on the Pennsylvania Association for Gifted Education Board for a little over 6 years. I was their president and some other roles prior to that. And then as I was cycling off of that board, I still wanted to be involved in some gifted ed work. So I kind of looked up to NAGC to see what I can get involved with. And I am working alongside Jessica right now as her chair-elect to the Parent, Family, and Community Network. And I also chair the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee for NAGC currently until the end of August. At home, I have 2 boys, so opposite of Jessica, no girls in this household except for me. Lots of boys. My boys are 9, and my oldest son, who I'll talk a little bit about tonight, is going to be 15 next Saturday. So his birthday's coming up soon. So I think Maria is now going to take us through some of our goals tonight and start our discussion on perfectionism. Maria?
Great, thank you. You can go ahead and move on. Yep. So we have a few goals for our discussion tonight. We encourage your participation in the chat. Make sure you chime in, ask questions. That's where we look for the questions as we move along. And also other strategies and things that you'd like to share with the community. We'll start by defining and discussing our understanding of the nature of perfectionism in gifted children. And we'll talk about identifying some of those common signs and challenges that go along with that perfectionistic nature in children. Then we'll discuss some practical strategies that parents and caregivers can use to provide support and really help children with that perfectionism. We'll discuss and we'll learn and we'll share resources, and we'll also be hoping to learn from each other. So we'll be having conversations, we'll share ideas, and then we hope to hear ideas from you guys in the chat as well along the way. So let's get started. The first thing that always comes up is if there's a question, if there's such a thing as healthy perfectionism. And in all of the research, there's a lot of disagreement about whether there is such a thing called healthy perfectionism or not. Generally, what we're going to say tonight is that perfectionism can be that unhealthy piece. And when it's healthy, it looks like pursuing excellence. So Greenspan describes it that way. How you know that it's more of that healthy variety, that pursuit of excellence, is that they will joyfully try new tasks. They're willing to take those risks and they're not super nervous about it. They jump in with a beginner's mentality. When they decide they're going to take karate for the first time, they know that they're not going to know how to do it right away, and they're excited to learn how to do it. They also accept constructive feedback calmly. When someone gives them strategies or suggestions for improvement, they don't take that personally and they're able to just kind of incorporate that and accept it. They focus on that improvement, not with the expectation that they're going to be flawless the first try. And they really see those mistakes as a chance for growth. So when we're talking about it, whether we call it healthy perfectionism or the pursuit of excellence, that ability to look for improvement and take constructive criticism is kind of the hallmark of that piece of it. And they can still be actively pursuing that high level of achievement and lots of growth, but it's that mindset that's different. When we're talking beneath the surface of perfectionism, though, there's some of those underlying factors that go into that. That history of success without facing any challenges along the way is often a contributing factor for students to develop perfectionism. When they're just so used to always getting it right the first time, and their early childhood and their early elementary experiences are like that, they start to equate I'm smart, it's easy, instead of I'm smart, I can make mistakes and learn, and that can lead to some perfectionism. Our culture is another big aspect that leads to perfectionism. That emphasis that we have on competition, on achievement, on individualism and individual goals can feed into the kind of mindset that's already leaning in that perfectionist direction. But really, the hallmark of perfectionism is anxiety. It's really that anxiousness about mistakes. If I make a mistake, how will people see me? Will they still value me? Will they still care about me? Will they still think I'm smart, good, a good friend? It's that anxiety piece that's underneath it. Sometimes there's other things too, family dynamics, birth order, being the eldest girl in my family, like that is something that tends to go along with perfectionism, but it doesn't have to be that way. I know parent modeling can impact it too. I had to watch myself carefully as a mother because I knew I leaned in that perfectionist direction. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong as a parent. It just helps to build that awareness so you can model for your children. And we'll talk about those strategies as well. And there are just some natural propensities for anxiety. Certain brains are wired that way, and brains that are wired in a more anxious state will be more likely to go into that anxiety of perfectionism. There's a couple of different profiles that one of the resources that we have in our list for you later called Letting Go of Perfect, they talk about a few different type of perfectionistic profiles. The nice thing about that resource is then it also gives you concrete strategies to help with those different types. So they talk about that academic achiever who's always worried if they don't get 100%. That was me. They're always, asking questions and how do I get that last point? The accuracy assessor, where they're always also trying to get everybody else to always be 100% right. There's the risk evader. They're not going to do something if they don't think it's going to be perfect. The controlling image manager, where that perfectionism really is about how other people are seeing them. And of course, the procrastinating perfectionist, like we talked about a little bit. So that book, if you look at that later, really does give some good strategies that tie into those different types. Now, just kind of a quick overview of some of the indicators. These are probably things you've seen in your child or your friends' children if you're here at this presentation, that really are indicators that that anxiety-laden perfectionism is there. A big one is when they respond to a compliment with something like, thanks, but I could have done better, or thanks, but that was not my best work, or did you see this mistake here? And they can't just accept that they did a good job on something. Another huge one, and this happens to me, I'm in classes right now and I see it myself. Once you've turned the work in, usually people get calm. They're like, it's done, I've moved on. In perfectionists, they often have heightened anxiety after it's no longer in their hands. They can't keep redoing it to make it better and better. It's done now, and they're just waiting to be judged. So if that anxiety goes up after it's out of their hands, that's an indicator of that perfectionism. We talked about procrastination. Again, they'll often have this beautiful picture in their mind of this big, elaborate product they think they can get to at the end. And knowing they don't have the skills to get there, they have trouble starting. Intense sensitivity to criticism, avoiding having their work being seen or judged, leads into the second one too. They just won't compete. They'll have a beautiful poem, but they won't submit it to a contest. They're doing a great job in their singing, but they won't go to an audition because they know they're going to be judged, or considering it a failure unless they came in first. So those are really big signs that there's something unhealthy going on that you need to support them with and help them work through so they can go back to that pursuit of excellence without the anxiety underlying it. Oh wait, I had one more thing. So there are things in their lives that can impact how that perfectionism is showing up from day to day. So you may have a child that seems perfectionistic sometimes, but not others. When they're spread really thin because they're in a lot of activities, that anxiety level could go up. When they're in a new situation, if they go from big fish in a little pond where they know they're the best in their karate group, and then they move up a level and all of a sudden they're not the best, that perfectionism could show up again. New pressures, extra pressures to succeed. If you do convince them to try for that audition, you do convince them to submit their poem, that extra anxiety about that high stakes thing may cause them to show that perfectionism more. This will show up as they're applying to high schools, as they're applying to colleges. Those are like big high stakes time that will make a perfectionist person even more anxious. And then sleep and safety, or health and safety. If they're not getting enough sleep, if their nutrition is off, and just life safety factors. So we're all kind of anxious about the world around us. They can feel that, they can see it. That may also cause an increase in those perfectionistic behaviors. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about how parents can support these challenges, and I'll pass it over to Jessica to get that started.
Thanks, Maria. And as you're saying all those indicators, I really appreciated it because it's reminding me like, okay, this is why we're having the webinar, because we've seen these things in our kids. We know it's a problem, and we just want to help them. And so that's the whole purpose, is for us to move from sort of scared and silent on the sidelines to being coming along next to our kids and showing support and empathy. So this next section is about, okay, what do we do, right? Hopefully this is why you're here. So we're going to start with the idea that we need to acknowledge that it's happening, but not in a judgmental way. And so that's pretty difficult to do, but we need to listen with empathy, but at first opening that dialogue without judgment allows that listening to start to happen. So we might try a phrase like, I noticed you didn't really seem very happy with your final product. Can you tell me what you're thinking? So I noticed this is happening, not you shouldn't be so hard on yourself, immediately judging or immediately telling what to do, but just opening just something that you noticed about their behavior and offering that support and that caring attitude. You might even say, it sounds like you're pretty frustrated, like acknowledging that they are frustrated and that you see them and that their feelings are valid and that you want to talk. And so I see you're feeling frustrated. Do you want to talk about it? That kind of opening without judgment. And then we move toward listening. And then after the listening, after you've really given them a chance to share anything that they're feeling and validating those feelings, then you can offer support. So the rest of the strategies that are involving offering support, just keep in mind that comes after the listening. And as a parent of 4 teenagers, I can tell you that sometimes they're not ready to talk until you're already in bed. Like at 10 o'clock at night, they're finally ready to open up, and then they'll talk your ear off till midnight, which is really difficult. But also you need to be ready to listen when they're ready to talk. And sometimes they're not experiencing those serious feelings on a different timeline than we are. But anyway, so that's what happens at my house. At least when they were younger, it was right after school. Was when the emotions hit big time. But then later they started doing their homework later and later at night. And then that's when the perfectionism started kicking in. So we're going to listen first, acknowledge that they're not feeling great about something, and then offer some suggestions and support. So after the listening, the next thing is we're really thinking about what they're telling us. And so as Maria mentioned earlier, there's different types of perfectionism. And as we're listening to their responses, we're thinking, okay, is this the achieving kind of perfectionism? Are we avoiding the risks kind of perfectionism? What is it that they really need? And we're going to provide you, like she said, with some other resources for helping to determine that. But if we've got the overachieving perfectionist versus the underachieving perfectionist, our focus is going to look a little different. But no matter what, we really want to try to shift our mindset from perfection to progress. So did we accomplish anything yet? Did we make progress, even if it wasn't perfect? And those small steps of progress, acknowledging those, and that might be looking forward for our underachievers that we're wanting to help move in a positive direction. We might be looking at small steps forward. Or for our overachieving perfectionists, we might be looking at small progress that was made in the past. Sometimes it's hard for them to see how far they've really come without intentional and specific praise for effort. And that's another strategy that we'll talk about, is avoiding praising the outcome and instead praising the effort. Because sometimes, like Maria said, when they've gone through school for so long without putting in a lot of effort, and things always come easily, it's hard to make that big effort and then see a mistake, and that big effort suddenly feels like a failure. So we're going to look at small steps and focus on progress. And then, of course, we want to avoid reinforcing that all or none thinking. And sometimes that's hard because as parents, we want to have high expectations. And so we, of course, want our students to get straight A's. And straight A's is what they should want because that's what they're capable of. And we know their brain can do it. But that all or nothing, all A's or nothing really is going to be what leads them down the route that one small mistake is a big failure. And it might not even be worth trying if I'm going to get a B anyway. So we want to be clear in the expectation of growth and progress, not just everything is going to be exactly right all the time. So the hardest thing that we're going to say tonight is that, like Maria mentioned again, it has to come from us first. It has to be modeled in actions, not just words. So that means when you're having some thoughts about things that you didn't do quite well, sometimes vocalizing those thoughts, talking about what it feels like to face a challenge, talking about when there's been a setback at work, something happened that you didn't plan for, or even as an adult, I made a mistake when I was at work. Talking about that, talk about how you feel about it, how it makes you feel, and then what you're going to do about it, and let them see you make a little bit of progress in your own mistakes. So that's how we foster that growth mindset and model resilience. And again, this isn't easy. I'm not going to pretend like I've even got it figured out yet, but that's what we're working toward. So here we go with the practical strategies. So we're going to make this a bit more specific now. So again, just like we were saying in the last slide, you're going to normalize your own mistakes. So sharing examples of those learning moments that you have as a human, that we all have, or even asking other adults to be willing to share. Sometimes they don't want to hear from mom and dad. We're like the last person they want to talk to about it. But if there's an aunt or uncle or a family friend or even a grandparent who's had a rough day and they're willing to talk about how they're managing it in a positive way, sometimes those other adult role models can show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And then again, focusing on the process and progress. So like I mentioned before, praising effort, creativity, and persistence rather than outcomes. That allows for them to make mistakes and still celebrate that they learned something because they worked really hard at that. And we could celebrate how hard they worked, even if it didn't turn out exactly like they expected. So some of the ways I might model that for maybe this is true in your home as well, but some things I like to say is, wow, I really wish I could prepare a perfect meal for us all tonight. I had this vision in my head of what it was going to look like when I made you dinner, but you know what? We ran out of time because X, Y, and Z happened. And so here's what dinner looks like. But you know what? It's going to taste okay. We're going to survive this together. Or I have only so much time, so I know that I'm going to do my best with the time that I have, because that anxiety sometimes comes from the time pressure. And as adults, we know really well what that time pressure feels like, but usually we've managed to deal with it in productive adult ways, but sometimes it's hard to actually verbalize the ways that we're managing it effectively. But that's when our kids are able to learn from us the most, when we can model it. And then the next thing is setting realistic expectations. So this is sometimes hard, even for gifted kids, because they have such big goals and they see the whole big dream in front of them of where they want to go. But if their frontal lobe isn't totally developed yet, they don't know exactly how to get to where they want to get. And so setting small, realistic expectations is super helpful. So I wanted to mention a couple of specific resources in here. And one is creating a flexible schedule and doing that with specific steps. So if there's a big project or a big goal, a tool that is fantastic that's out there right now is called Goblin Tools. It's Goblin Tools. And Maria, have you seen Goblin Tools? It's fantastic because it has something called a magic to-do list. And you can put in any big goal and it will break it down into the steps you need to do to get to that goal. And then if you think even those steps seem a little hard to tackle, you can click another button and it will break those steps down. Everything from making dinner one night to how to lose weight, or how to get into an Ivy League college. Like, put in your big goal and then look at what the steps it takes to get there. And sometimes even just throwing that out there and talking it through with your child can help them realize, like, oh, a little bit at a time really will get me there. But they just don't have their brains developed all the way to be able to figure that out for themselves. So we have to come alongside them and help them figure it out and realize that the schedule has to be flexible. Maybe what I thought I was going to get done on Tuesday night, we ended up not having time on Tuesday night. So we have to put that to Wednesday, but that's going to be okay, because then on Thursday I will have more time to do something else. And thinking about it in a flexible way rather than an all or nothing way makes those expectations a little bit realistic. And again, modeling that in your own behavior is going to help so much. Also teaching self-compassion. So saying things like, it's okay not to be perfect, but also some other ones like, mistakes help your brain grow, or that mistake helped my brain grow. Oh, wow. I remember when I was a beginner at this and now I'm a little bit better, or acknowledging that every expert, every person they come across who they look up to or admire in whatever they're trying to do, whether it's basketball or oil painting or whatever, even their favorite teacher was once a beginner and definitely made mistakes. So acknowledging that, wow, it's great that you're learning. You're not a beginner anymore. You're figuring it out, those positive affirmations and giving themselves room to have compassion and empathy for themselves. Also, of course, helps them teach that to use it with others. Then one of the things that's hardest in our culture, like Maria mentioned, we have such a culture of achievement and encouraging balance in those achievements. So we don't have to be great at everything. We don't even have to be involved in everything. We can choose one or two things that we want to really work hard and be good at. But those healthy habits, things that keep us active and keep our brains and our bodies moving, are great for us. And it's okay to be good at some things, but it's impossible to be good at all of the things. So promoting that balance between things that are fun and that we enjoy and that we're willing to work hard for because we love working on them. That's when we're going to get down into level 7. We'll come back to that in a minute. But that gross motor and creative flow times, that benefits cognitive function. So if they're doing something or playing something or involved in something that is so intense for them and that they're so good at it that they lose track of time, that's a psychological concept that we would call flow. So if your child is involved in something that they're so passionate about and that they love so much that they lose track of time while they're doing it, that's the kind of activity that actually brings positive affirmation to them. And so those are the kind of things that we want to allow them to spend more time doing. But if it's something that's constantly making them more and more anxious, and even before and after they do it, it's not a positive thing, then that's something we could walk back on our balance. So trying to decide what is worth all that effort and excitement and even a little bit of anxiety and what's not worth it. And that's the encouraging balance part of it. And then number 6, celebrating the positives. So of course we want to be so happy when things are great and we want to celebrate small bits of progress, but also like Maria was saying earlier, if something healthy is going on and they're really striving for excellence, you can see that they worked really hard, celebrating that hard work with them, knowing that you're acknowledging that something really good happened. When it's healthy and appropriate, you can feel like that excellence is a superpower. It's okay to say, yeah, that was a really good job. You should be proud of yourself because I can see how hard you worked on it and it is fantastic. Instead of offering critique, which sometimes we can do as parents because we know they want to get better, but holding back on those critiques and celebrating the positive things with them especially can model that attitude of growth. And finally, this is my favorite strategy. And so I wanted to make sure I got to share it. And this one is from Lisa Van Gemmert's book on perfectionism, but she talks about the level strategy. I think it's in other work as well, but imagining that every task has some sort of value for your child. And that value is how much it's worth on their anxiety levels. Some tasks really are a level 5, things like open heart surgery. I hope that my surgeon who's doing my open heart surgery is at a level 5. This is very important. It needs to be as perfect as possible. They better be striving for excellence because that is an important task. However, making my bed in the morning is probably not a level 5. It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to probably be done. But, and same with maybe like folding laundry or even some tasks at school are not a level 5, and that's okay. Some things that are okay to be done with minimal effort and to let it go and kind of forget about it. So sometimes naming those actual levels can help. Asking kids, what level do you think this really is? Is it similar to open heart surgery? You know, is it that big of a deal? Is it the same as your driver's test? Yeah, that's a level 5. I can see why you're so concerned about it. If it's not really a level 5, is it okay to let a few things go, or maybe go ahead and turn it in without double checking and triple checking because it's really just a level 2 kind of activity. That's what I found to be one of the most effective things in my house and with some of my students at school who struggle with this too. So now I'd love to turn it over to Kali because we're going to start doing a bit more interaction here. So unless anybody else has anything they want to throw in, Maria or Kali, about practical strategies.
I was just gonna comment on the 1 to 5. And I love that strategy, but I have to share, like, my boys are so different.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like making the bed is like a low level for you, and I would agree. But my son, who's turning 15, joined JROTC in January, and he now believes his bed making skills need to be a level 5 because they have to have the neat corners, and that's how military life is. And he's been having like this whole lecture. I caught him yesterday morning lecturing my 9-year-old about the corners of his bed aren't tucked in neat. And so, just his level right now is not what it used to be in bed making. So it's just funny, like some of those levels can shift. And yeah, we have to have those discussions to bring them back down to, well, we're not in the military right now. Like,
I love that.
goal for future. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen, in the comment. Yeah, context does matter. So it's like
Context
a whole
matters.
new
And
thing.
every kid's
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Maria, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything. I know Jessica asked before we move to our strategies.
No, I was just going to say
Okay.
something similar about those levels. That is an amazing strategy that works really well.
Okay, perfect. I didn't want to just keep going and not give you that opportunity since Jessica opened the door for us. So yeah, we want to hear from you. So using that chat area, do you have a strategy or strategies that have worked for you and your own child in the past? And then as the strategies are coming in, we're going to pick a few, maybe extend upon them. And, we can revisit some of them if we have extra time, at the end of our session as well. So let's see what's coming in on the chat here. What have you all used? Raising efforts is really big. Oh, Karen, another good one. Thank you. Clear the hurdle before you climb the mountain. Yeah, absolutely right. Um, Absolutely an important one. Yeah, we got to do one and then move on to another if we have time, right? We can't get everything done in one day. Sleep is important, absolutely. Oh, they're all coming in so fast now. I'm having trouble staying on one before it pops up on me.
I like that. Will it matter in 5 years?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the journaling and prioritizing. I know that's been helpful with my oldest son most recently, his journaling. So much so he takes his journal to and from school with him now too, and writes things down in there to help him through the day, and he'll reflect on it at night or he'll share it with us. And I'll kind of talk about some of the things my husband and I are using with my oldest son too, and come back to the journaling. But that absolutely is helpful. What else is in here? I see some things in here about pointing out the mistakes, which we talked about already, and normalizing those. Mm-hmm. Oh, I like this one. Tell yourself what you would tell a friend if they had made a mistake. Yeah, because we're much kinder when we're giving kind of like those advices and pep talks with others than we are with ourselves sometimes. It's very easy to be self-critical and like, put ourselves down instead of maybe lifting ourselves up sometimes. And I think that's a really good strategy there. I like that one. Okay, we'll come back to some of these. So please, if others have more, please continue to kind of populate those in the chat. Thank you for those who shared already. I know our panel's going to write some of those down. And like I said, we'll come back to them and share some more as we kind of move on. But we want to keep track of time, so we do have time at the end for some Q&A because there were some good questions that came in too. So Jessica, can you move us ahead, please? Thank you. So we have some good strategies that were already shared by Maria and Jessica, but we know there's going to be challenges. Our kids are going to come across them with all the best strategies in place. So my oldest son is a huge fan of Michael Jordan, who's known for saying, obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it or go through it or work around it. And so, that obstacle or wall you hit isn't the end of your journey. It just provides that opportunity for us to think creatively about how to work through or around or over those obstacles. And I would agree, as parents, like we ourselves are constantly trying to find those new paths for ourselves to help our children and just get through parenting life. I will tell you, as my oldest son is, now as a teen and first year of high school, a lot of new things that we're trying to figure out. like, and when to intervene, like when is it okay to intervene, you know, and when is it not okay to intervene. And that's our current challenge. We want him to be independent and grow, but we also don't want to wait too long that his struggle becomes so intense for him that he withdraws from his learning or gets filled with, you know, too much anger or, you know, emotions, anxiety, because he's not getting the support he needs from us or maybe at school. So, you know, we're trying to really find that balance this year as a first year high schooler, and parents. And so when we look at some of these points on our common challenges, when we look at the third point here, balancing that support, one thing that we've started to use with our son, and it came out of some of the discussions we had with a counselor he was seeing 2 years ago. He was seeing a counselor for some bullying at school. And she talked to us about he's becoming a teenager, and teens don't want advice given to them because they will just throw it away. If they're not ready to accept it, they're not going to take it. They're not going to use it. They're not going to process it. And they're going to kind of reject it because they didn't ask for your opinion. So we have like question stems we use with him. And, you know, we ask him like, what was a success at school today for you? And it doesn't have to be academic. Like, was there a success with like making a new friend? Or, you know, in his journal, he also works on writing poetry to express his emotions. So we ask him like, what is a success he had? What is something that was difficult at school? You know, how did he overcome that difficulty? What were some solutions he came up with? And then we'll ask him, like, do you need any support from us? You know, for anything that happened today or this week or that's coming up, you know, tomorrow. And we wait to see if he invites us in for that, you know, advice. Just like Jessica mentioned before, it may not be right in that moment, but, you know, an hour later, as we're like putting him, you know, to bed, saying goodnight, he might be like, so about earlier. And then he's finally ready to kind of share. But we opened that path, you know. But yeah, what was that success? What was something difficult? Because it lets him process that with us. So I want to pause for a second. Besides some of the challenges that you're seeing on your screen, are there other challenges that you face with your child with perfectionism that aren't listed on the screen? If you want to put those in the chat. I'm curious to see what else maybe you all have been struggling with. And I'm sorry for the coughing. I'm getting over being sick. This is the best I've been in a week, so I'm really excited. I was worried I wasn't going to make it. Oh, how to deal with refusal to accept any feedback. Yeah. That is a tough one, and that's something that we were struggling with. And the question stems have really helped with that and fighting the urge to be like, let me give you some help with that. Like that's been a big struggle of mine, but we have noticed so much more of him coming to us by not forcing that advice on him, and just giving him that space. It was difficult in the beginning, but he comes to us more openly now, I think, because he knows we're not going to come upstairs every couple minutes and be like, how about now? How about now? How you feeling? But yeah, giving him that space has been helpful. Praise even for effort can still be seen as expectation, pressure to perform. Yeah. And we've seen that too with my son. We started talking to him about grades because he was feeling really anxious about grades. The year he got bullied was the first year he didn't make honor roll since he was able to get honor roll in school in 8th grade. And he really had a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions around that. And we realized that we might be putting more pressure on him than we ever thought we did. Because we always said, you know, we want you to do well at school. And he just had so much pressure around it. So we now tell him as long as he's trying his best, that's enough for us. And if that best gets him a B and not an A, that's fine. But if he ever doesn't understand something, we want him to ask questions for his teachers, ask us for help and questions. It's not okay to not understand something and just keep pushing forward. But if you understand and you're trying your best and you're still making a couple mistakes, that's okay. You don't need to end up with an A all the time. Um, you can be a very successful person and not get an A in history class. Like, if you're a heart surgeon, you probably should have passed your biology classes, right, Jessica? Have those steady hands. So every career path has those areas where we do need to be closer to that level 5 expectation of maybe more close to perfect. But not everybody needs to be perfect in everything. And so we've been seeing some of his anxiety around grades come down, which is saying, hey, did you try your best on this? I know he just got a 67 the other day on something. I'm like, did you try your best? And he goes, yeah. He's like, but there were only 8 questions, so I only really got like 2 wrong. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, when we think about it that way, and maybe the 68 isn't that bad because it wasn't like 100 questions and we missed 30 some. So yeah, looking at that, again, that context kind of matters. Okay. I'm going to come back to some of these, but I'm trying to keep track of that time too. So Jessica, can you move me to the next slide? Do you mind? Thank you. Let me close the chat window so I can see the screen and the slide here. So to expand a little bit on, what I was just talking about with my son and problem solving, again, we don't want to jump in all the time with our kids with those perfectionistic tendencies. We want to guide them through versus solving those problems for them, because we want them to learn those skills of problem solving. And we've already heard from Maria and Jessica, like some of those outward like thinking skills, like letting them hear our thought process for how we have solved things. So creating that open space for that dialogue, but letting them hear how we solve those problems is really helpful for our kids. So excuse me, when we're working on creating that, open, safe space, when we see that frustration or anxiety or that overwhelming feeling, they may not be able to even express it in the best words. And we've noticed that too with my own son, that he has trouble finding the correct language. And sometimes he knows so many big words. And so he'll misuse words for things. We're like, is that really the word you're looking for? Let's think about that. Because I'm like, I'm not sure if that's really what you mean to say. And he's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, well, what's the definition for that word? Like, he's like, oh, wait, no, that is not the right word. And I was like, okay. So he gets so caught up in his head, he can't really think how to explain things. So like Jessica mentioned before, noticing that they seem frustrated and just opening that open-ended question of like, what's going on? And we've also found success in just like changing the subject sometimes. Or my husband's really good at throwing like a crazy, like oddball question out or a random joke to like almost break that tension and break the ice. And, my older son and I'll be like, Dad, you're just weird. Like, stop being weird, stop being crazy. And he's like, oh, come on. Like, what do you think about that situation? And then once he kind of lets go of some of that frustration by having that like random conversation, we can go back to, well, I want to go back to, like, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? Is there anything you want to share? And sometimes that's giving him enough space to then kind of start dialoguing with us because we got his brain off of something. And then those co-developed strategies for pressure, again, instead of imposing that solution, we want to engage them in the brainstorming session and making it manageable. We like to draw things out and cartoon things. And so I'll say like, ooh, I know something I would like to do to solve this problem, and I'll draw it out. And then my son will add to it and be like, well, what if it like looked like this or took a turn this way? We end up like sketching it out. And so he finds a lot of enjoyment in that too, like adding on to like a collective picture about how to solve the problem. So it doesn't always have to be verbal, like co-development of strategies, to manage that pressure. Finding something to kind of come in and connect with my kiddo. And then breaking things into those smaller steps, because sometimes a problem is really big. So we want to start with a part of it and work on that part. and then move to the next part. So I think, Jessica, that tool you shared with everybody, I wrote it down too, because I think that's going to be really helpful with my son, because he does have like these big picture problems, and we're like, well, that's not a now problem, but let's break it down and like, what is a step we can work on towards that bigger issue right now? Because that's a life goal issue that you're worrying about. We're still in 9th grade right now. We're just starting. So let's look at right now kind of issue. And then that autonomy piece, like that self-confidence, fostering that independence, and like asking those questions, what do you think would work best for you in this situation? Because again, we don't want to tell them this is what you should do, but what do they currently think might work best? Or if they are open to those co-development strategies and we've come up with 3 paths, maybe saying out of the 3 paths we just came up with, which one do you think you'd like to start with, right? So some of our kids might need more of that scaffolding of we gave them some options or we worked through options with them, but now they get to decide which path they're going to try first. And we can check back in with them and say, hey, did you try that strategy at school today to deal with your friendship issue or for how you decide to study for science this time? Do you think it's working? Should we try a different strategy next time to study for that science test or whatever it is? That might make them more open to accepting feedback or accepting ideas from you too. And yeah, it's okay if the first idea doesn't work. We can work together to come up with new ideas. Yeah, I think those are great things. So using the different strategies, we've shared some ideas, some good things, and just making those steps forward. Our goal isn't perfection with our kids, and we've talked about that with my son. We're not trying to make you perfect, but we want to help you make progress to make you more capable to solve problems on your own, because we're not going to always be around. You're going to go off to college. You're going to live in your own place one day. You're going to have a family. It's interesting. I have 2 boys, but they're very like, my oldest is like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have kids. And if I don't get married, adoption's okay. And I was like, what? And then my youngest one is like, no wife, no kids, just work. And I'm like, I never thought I'd hear 2 boys of different ages like already have life plans for if they're going to have life partners and kids or not. My youngest even said, if I accidentally have a kid, Jordan's going to watch them while I go tour the world with the WWE. And I'm like, oh, good. You have a backup plan just in case. Great. What have you been watching that I don't know about? So yeah, we don't want to make them perfect. We just want progress. We want them to be capable problem solvers so they can lead their best life and be capable when we're not around, right? Jessica, I want to pass it back to you. What do you have next up for our families tonight?
Uh-oh, not that. Sorry, y'all. Wrong button. I want to open it back up to everyone to share in the chat a little bit more, because this is really hard to do as a parent on your own. I would say nearly impossible. So we're kind of wanting to know how collaboration can help. And so is there anyone that has collaborated with you to help support your gifted child? And if so, how did that collaboration happen? That's what we're hoping to see in the chat next. So basically just share with us some ways that parents and educators have worked together to celebrate when a gifted child is really achieving their personal best, but also allowing room for mistakes. How can teachers and parents work together? So go ahead and share some ideas in the chat, and we'll hopefully learn from each other. Oh my gosh, I'm just now looking back at some of the chats. I think these came in a minute or 2 ago, but bibliotherapy is such a wonderful one. I can't believe we haven't already mentioned that, because helping them know they're not the only one who feels the way they do, who feels anxious sometimes or worried. That bibliotherapy can be great. And teachers and librarians can be the best ones to recommend the books. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing that. Yeah. Having a compassionate teacher is such a gift. Yeah, sometimes keeping that line of communication open to celebrate the positives, not just when we're sharing concerns back and forth as parents or teachers. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that too. That super high expectations for those scholarships, yeah, can put so much pressure on kids. Oh, yeah, thank you. The ballet instructors. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a teacher at school. What celebrating growth as a dancer. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I also loved Callie's stories about her boys kind of cheering each other on. You know, sometimes we get collaboration from the sibling and we didn't even know it was coming. Sometimes we get collaboration when we don't need it from the sibling, but when they're positive and helpful, sometimes that's just the best. Okay, and one more idea. Yeah. Sometimes there's not that support out there because people think gifted kids are going to be fine. Yeah. Oh, they're going to be great, and they don't need our support. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love each of these ideas. We're going to keep track of them again and what we share back out later. But in the interest of time, I do want to make sure we get to the next section where Maria is going to be sharing some excellent resources. So I'm going to move us on ahead to that next one.
And I'm not sure, Jessica, if we can even click on these links, but you'll see this information come through when you get the slideshow. There's a really good tip sheet. NAGC puts together parent information sheets, and there's one specifically about perfectionism that we will have linked in our information that goes out to all of our all the people who RSVP'd. And then the other thing that we did was we came up with a list as a group ourselves, as a panel, of recommendations of information that we've used in the past that we really like. And it looks like they got put into the chat as well. But when I'll just take a look at the resources, we had some examples of books specifically for adults to read that are nonfiction. There's also a few links when we talk about bibliotherapy, middle grade books for kids that focus on perfectionism and feature it, as well as some picture books, because even those older students, sometimes it's easier to do a quick picture book and talk about it than to expect them to read an entire chapter book while they're also doing all their other schoolwork. There's some good organizations that we listed and have links for in there, obviously NAGC, but also saying with understanding comes calm. There are a couple of great places out there that also have videos and webinars and information you can use, and some good websites. We linked to some articles for those of you who are of the research mindset, where you want to read those longer form things. And some of those articles are the ones that we used as we were helping getting ready for this. And then I also put in, I love podcasts. I like to listen to podcasts as I'm driving to and from work. And so two of my favorite podcasts, one is the Neurodiversity podcast and one is Tilt Parenting. We linked to their specific episodes about perfectionism. But I also recommend that you just check out those podcasts in general because they have a lot of good information and guest speakers on a variety of topics, social emotional learning, as well as other information about gifted students and twice exceptional students. So those are those resources that we will link for you. And that document is the Canva one that just came through in the chat too. I guess we can go to the next slide. Yep. So before we go back to you guys for any last minute questions, we just kind of wanted to reframe and encapsulate everything we've talked about. So first of all, when we're dealing with students with perfectionism, we want to make sure that they know that it's okay to strive for excellence and that we want to support them in their desire to be the best they can be, as long as they're managing it effectively and it's not, damaging their self-esteem and it's not keeping them from sleeping. They need to have that healthy balance, and we want to support them with that. That parents and caregivers, obviously, you guys are with the kids a lot more than those teachers are every day. So you're the partners with the classroom teacher in fostering that balance and resilience. The communication with those teachers is important. The more we talk together as a team, the more that we can be on the same page and communicating the same message to our students. And really, progress, not perfection, is the goal. And that's the goal for us as well as parents in helping our children manage their perfectionism. Our kids are not going to transform overnight because we tried these 2 great tricks. We're going to make progress in helping them deal with their perfectionism. It's not going to be an overnight fix. So keep that in mind for yourself as well. Progress, not perfection, as a parent is also important. All right. And then Kaylee, I think you had a little bit left to talk about before we head out too.
Yeah, really quick before we get to the questions, we hope you are enjoying our discussions, some of our tips, our tricks, discussions around challenges. And this is, our first collaboration actually second, because Bonnie did join us in one of ours in the fall, collaborations between our networks to kind of bring you the content. So we do have 2 other events kind of coming up on the horizon. So from the Parent Family Community Network side of things, we're going to have a Sip and Sip on April 24th, talking about summertime stress strategies. So that Sip and Speak is not recorded. It is not a webinar format. It is open, so we can all have cameras on. We can all chat live. So it's different than the webinar. So we share different resources and strategies about this topic of summertime stress and balancing that structure and spontaneity. So, please feel free to come join us, and you can unmute and chat in that session with us. And then on May 8th, the Social and Emotional Development Network has their next webinar event continuing this theme of perfectionism through the spring. But this session's really unique because it's from the student perspective. So students are sharing their own lived experiences about living with perfectionism. So that'll be a really neat one to kind of tune into to hear from the student side of things, and not just from a parent, an educator kind of side of the table. And then we'll have one other Sip and Speak event in July about starting the new school year strong. What's on your wish list? So lots of things coming up where you can chat with other parents, other families, but don't leave yet, because Bonnie, I think, has some questions that maybe she wrote down that we can get to before we really leave for the evening.
I've been following. There's been a lot of engagement in the chat. I really appreciate that from everyone. I did have kind of a couple of themes that came across that I wanted to pose to the panelists as I was looking at everything. The first thing that I wanted to ask all of you is, how do you really know with a gifted child what that level of effort was and where to start that praise or that prodding? Who wants to take it?
I'll just say you have to know your child pretty well. And then you also have to know what's happening at school pretty well too. And that's hard sometimes, especially the older they get. You can ask those sort of open-ended questions, and maybe Callie has some more good examples since she actually has a question stem somewhere. But asking them, oh yeah, how long did you spend working on that? Wow, oh wow, okay, that's great. How long did you spend working on that? Just asking just a little bit about time. Or you can say something something along the lines of, did you get that finished quicker than you thought you would? Or did that take you a little longer than you thought it might? Kind of getting an estimate of not only exactly how long it took, but also whether it matched their own expectations and whether they had to put more effort in than they thought or less effort in than they thought. I would avoid words like hard and easy because those are so subjective. And the kids' definition of hard and what you might understand as hard is not going to be worth diving into. But asking about time is a bit more specific, and then even asking, oh, is that faster than you finished the last thing that was similar? Like might give you a bit more understanding about the amount of effort. Somebody else want to?
I would agree with that. You want to stay away from those vague terms, like any words you can use that you'd be able to like quantify, right? That you'd be able to measure, so that you can show that growth over time too. So if it's something that, like we're talking about those levels 1 to 5, like what's important, what's not important, you know, just knowing, okay, this is something that's really important, so it might be difficult for them. And so they might actually be putting a lot of effort in, but it takes them longer because it's a struggle for them. So being able to talk to them about, sometimes things that come easy, we don't need as much time, but we may not be putting in as much effort in. So if we can stay within this easy and hard and talk about time or, how many problems they got through in the last couple minutes, and we can look at number of things completed. Like if we can quantify it, it's easier for kids to see their growth over time too in their work. So they can see the effort then.
Yeah, I like that idea of keeping that, like how much time, because that's something that kids can reflect on, and they know, and they can have that conversation. So I really like that. One last question, and then we're going to let the evening go. This has been a fascinating topic. I know we have a lot of interest in this. One last thing that this kind of stuck out for me is, how do you encourage autonomy of that decision making when you have students who their skills and their knowledge of the consequences aren't quite there yet? They're not quite there. So how do you encourage that autonomy?
I think it starts by doing the things that are a risk that that where the mistakes aren't as big of a deal. So giving them the autonomy to make those choices and take the risks and make a mistake, great. So you didn't end up getting first chair in that, but you still got in the orchestra. Or if, the smaller risks. And then the sooner we start with that, the smaller the stakes are. If we wait to give them autonomy until it's deciding where they're going to go to college or, those big pieces, they're much more likely to make those big mistakes because they haven't practiced what it looks like to be autonomous, make a choice, make a mistake, and have low stakes. So the sooner the better, and the lower stakes we model that for at the beginning, the better.
That's great advice. I like that a lot. All right, so our time is up for tonight. That was a very fast hour. I want to thank our panelists for facilitating tonight. I want to thank all of our audience for sticking with us and asking great questions and responding in our chat. As they said, we're going to continue this conversation with our students, and we're going to hear some things from them of how they feel living with this and what they would like us to do for them. And then we're going to just kind of mesh it all together for ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Beth Taylor. I am the network chair for the Social and Emotional Development Network, and we are so grateful for the PFC network for joining us tonight. This was an amazing collaboration. Thank you, ladies, so much for your time, for your knowledge. And with that, I want to thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.